Hi everyone, welcome to a new little series. So it's been a while since I finished my Dorney Park recreation, and I thought it'd be fun to do a couple more videos here for the YouTube channel, but I didn't want to commit to another large project quite yet. The Dorney Park and Cedar Point recreations definitely took a lot of time, and they were really fun to do, but I think it would be fun to do some smaller projects, some things that can be done in maybe 1 or 2 videos each. So I've decided to start a new little mini series here where we are still going to be recreating some rides, but not necessarily the full parks to go with them. Thought it might be a fun excuse to do some rides that I think are interesting or unique, some ride types I haven't built before, and not be committed to doing the entire park that goes with them. So we're going to start with this one today, see how it goes. So if you were following along with my Cedar Point recreation series from a couple of years ago, I talked briefly a little bit about all the rides I built. Of course, I recreated the park as it stood at the time. But there are a couple of rides from Cedar Point that I think are pretty neat and would be fun to build, even if they don't exist anymore. And the first one of those is Disaster Transport, which is a bobsled coaster that used to exist here in the Gatekeeper Plaza area. They tore it down, I think, at the end of 2012 to prepare for Gatekeeper. And it may not have been the greatest ride ever, but I still liked it a lot. It was definitely a big part of my childhood growing up and going to the park. So I have a soft spot in my heart for it. And I think it'd be fun to give it a little spin and see what it would look like if we were to build it in RCT. So let's get building. All right, so I have a new blank map here, and we're just gonna build basically a little diorama of just the disaster transport area, the plaza around it, the beach, maybe a couple of the supporting rides that are nearby. It would be nice to throw in the observation tower that used to be there as well, because it's very close to disaster transport. It'd make a lot of sense to have it there, as it was also torn down for a Gatekeeper. So let's go ahead and start building. And I'm actually, instead of going with the bobsled coaster type for now, I'm actually going to start with the wooden coaster just because it gives us a bit more track piece options. The bobsled coaster itself doesn't really do a whole lot. And since the ride is mostly indoors anyway, we don't necessarily need to have it look like a bobsled coaster for the whole track because we really won't be able to see it aside from maybe some cutout areas. So I'm not really sure where I want to put it. I want to have some space here in the front for the plaza, so let's scooty here towards the middle a little bit and then we can plan around that. Now I'm going to start building backwards here because I actually don't know how tall I'm going to be making the lift hill. And I think it'd be easier to start from the end of the coaster and build backwards so we have a better idea of what kind of heights we're going to be looking at here. And also as I go, I do want to block out some of the areas where the buildings are going to be. There is one large show building near the lift hill, but there's also a couple small ones here in the back as well. And I think it would make sense to add some placeholders in here for where those buildings are going to be. Might help us give a good sense of what the scale for the buildings and the coaster are going to look like all at once. You're going to need to be pretty small if we're going to make this look the way we want it to. This building here is on the diagonal, so not exactly sure how I'm going to do this one. It's going to be a little tricky. We've got diagonal walls that we can use, of course, but making sure that we get the coaster in there and going the right way is going to be a little hard, but I'm sure I can figure it out. For a lot of the areas that are going to be outside the show buildings, if you've seen a photo of it, you know that it is still entirely enclosed. It has these kind of big tubes that connect the buildings together. And I'm going to be changing it to dinghy slide for those portions of the ride. It's going to be a little bit smaller than the normal bobsled track, but I think it's the best we're going to get as far as visuals are going to go. And I need to remember what kind of track pieces the dinghy slide has. Turns out, not a whole lot. It just does flat turns and that's it. So I guess any track that we want to be visible between those show buildings is going to need to be flat track, which kind of sucks. Really wish one day this dinghy slide will get helixes and slope turns and all that, but not for today. So this helix here in real life is a lot closer to the station than I have it here, which is a little unfortunate. The whole track here kind of slopes a bit more towards the chain lift. Don't think there's a whole lot I can do about it, unfortunately. But we're going to be hiding this in a building, so maybe it won't be a huge deal if it's a little bit off. this whole section I'm building here, a lot of this is outdoors as well. This final turn here and the first bit of the drop, that's going to be pretty tricky because it is sort of on the, well, it's not really on the diagonal, but it definitely crosses over itself here in a weird way. I think I'm going to have to do something like this. However, again, the slope turns are not doable with dinghy slide tracks, so might have to do a flat turn here instead and then just figure out something else to do here. We also want to make sure it's not going too fast. That's, of course, always a problem with bobsled coasters. You don't want to have them going too fast over your hills. There are a lot of block sections in the layout, which helps. There's one right here and one right here as well, so each about a third of the way through the layout, which is going to help with our speeds. Hardly any uphill sections, but right here before the first block break we might have a problem. So I just want to make sure we're not going too fast. I think we're too far away from the lift hill though, and I do want to back this up, but it's going to be really tricky. I think what I might have to do instead is not have that diagonal bit. Do something like this instead, where we have a sharp turn down, and then we just won't see that because it'll be inside of our show building. We are still, unfortunately, really far away from the station because of the way that the track is angled. It isn't able to angle close like it's supposed to in real life. So I don't know if there's a good way to get around that. We might be able to shift some of the track a little bit if we get rid of some of the straight pieces that we have here. So I'm actually going to play around with the scenery manager a little bit to see if I can move some of these track pieces around. And hopefully I don't break everything. So I think since this section right here from this point back is all inside of a show building, I'm going to get rid of this diagonal. As much as it pains me to do so, it is part of the official layout, but I think in order to get things to fit a little bit more nicely in here, we're going to have it go back this way a little bit so we're closer to the station and we can make our turnarounds shaped a little bit more better. We can make our turnaround shaped a little bit more nicely. See how this goes. Something I just realized, our second block break is at 60 feet here, so we can't make our first block break any lower than that, so that's going to be tricky as well. I wonder if I can manage to scoot some of this stuff down. This is a tricky layout, as I should have expected. Okay, we have a layout. Not sure if I'm totally in love with it at this point, as these things go. So here we go. Here's Avalanche Run, as it was known before it got the indoor treatment. So let's go ahead and put the correct train type on here and give this a little spin to see how it goes. Again, since we're using wooden coaster track instead of bobsled track, our behavior is going to be slightly different, I think. Mostly here we're just checking for speed through the block breaks, over the hills, etc. Yep, definitely no good over there. All right, so this hill definitely needs to be fixed up a little bit, because this first block break looks really high off the ground, at least in the photos I'm looking at. Unfortunately, we don't have a good 3D view like we do with Cedar Point normally, so it's hard to tell how high off the ground this needs to be. Unfortunately, at this site, we're going to have the track clipping through itself a little bit, which I am obviously not a fan of. I wonder if we can get away with it, though, just to make the brakes work out a little bit better. I don't really like the shape of this, unfortunately. Don't get a ton of great options with the shape of the track here. This looks pretty terrible. I'm not really happy with the way this is turning out. This is harder than I thought it was going to be, which sucks a lot. Just to pencil in our other show buildings, though. I said I was going to do that as I went along, but then I just kind of forgot about it. There is one, obviously, large building here at the front. It takes up pretty much the entire length of the station and lift hill. Speed here, not great. It looks like we came a little too slow off of this block break and we're crawling through this middle of the course, but maybe that's just what happens when we have 5 cars on here. The ride is supposed to have 5 cars. If we turn it down to maybe 3, we wouldn't have block problems. So I guess we can color it here. While it was Avalanche Run, there's some photos in RCDB of it, and they look like they're light blue, but it's really hard to tell because the photos are old and the color is a little bit washed out. But it looks kind of like it's a icy blue, we'll call it. Maybe the light water is more appropriate. This also might work out a lot better once we get peeps in here and the trains are cycling normally with better timing. All right, so what happens when we turn this into bobsled track? All right, so it looks like we actually did use pieces that are already existing in the bobsled track, which is good news. So if we do cutouts and whatever, we'll actually be able to see all the track. And I think for the parts that are going to be outside, I've used track that's available on the dinghy side, so we'll be able to change that. So that's good. Still not a huge fan of the beginning here, especially this part that intersects itself, but this will be enclosed, so maybe that's not an enormous deal. All right, let's temporarily build a little queue here and see if we can get some peeps on this thing and figure out how it behaves. We do get some stats too, which is good. Not that I thought we wouldn't for some reason. 5, 5, and 4, which is probably about what I expected for a ride like this. Since it does go a little slow, but it'll be a little bit more exciting once we get some buildings in here. I've been scouring the internet for some aerial photos of disaster transport. Surprisingly, not as many immediately available as I thought there would be, which making it a little bit trickier to get the shape of the coaster and the buildings quite right. But we have some stuff to work with. All right, I'm going to pull up the land here again for the other big show buildings. Just block those out and see what they all look like. The main building is quite large. It goes all the way up to the edge here. Basically got something like this going on, but it's right up against the station here. And then we also have a couple other things. We have our main drop area here. And then this section is also all closed off with a slightly taller building. And then the lift hill is not in really a building, but it's enclosed in a big incline kind of thing. And then this will all go away once we put in some actual scenery in here. So comparing this to the aerial photos I can see, and that should work. And then outside of the building, we have a couple parts that stick out here at the front for the beginning of the ride, and this part here at the back. Our diagonal building I unfortunately got rid of. But this is where the second block break is, and it goes something like... Now, one thing I'm not sure about, and it isn't at all obvious from the photos, and I don't have a great memory of it, is the way that the queue goes. And I believe that the queue actually starts, if I can see from the photos looking at, the queue starts pretty much over here under the lift hill. It goes inside both of these big show buildings, and then you're going to board on the opposite side where I have peeps boarding right now. I should have put the entrance on the other side. So let's fix that real quick. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so that's a bit closer to the way that the queue goes in real life. Not sure how much I'm going to decorate inside for the queue area. I've seen some video footage and photos of it, so I could probably get a pretty good impression of it, but it depends how much we can see with the cutaways that I plan to make. I did just remember that Google Maps still has disaster transport for Street View, which is fantastic because it's really hard to get some photos of it. There just aren't a lot of photos of it online for some reason. But Street View fortunately still exists. There are image captures from 2011. Which was not great for building Gatekeeper, but is really fortunate for building disaster transport. And I can get a good view of where all the queue is and what the outside of the building looks like, especially lower down. So it looks like I was actually mistaken, and at least looking on Google Maps, the queue does not enter over here under the lift hill. It's more, at least there are people waiting outside along this area here. Yeah, now I'm thinking it's more like this, and then it'll zigzag back and forth inside this first show building here. Maybe that's more what it was like. Anyway, not the most important part. All right, I think we got the base down here though, so let's start decorating the outside a little bit here, see if we can get our facade here looking all right, pick out what pieces we're gonna use, all that kind of stuff. Actually, now that I'm in here looking a bit more closely at the Google Street View, it looks like we're going to close this down because they also had in this area here. Oh no, everyone fell off the queue. Ah, that's fine. Before you actually get to the lift hill, there's a couple tiles here where it looks like they've got a transfer track, which I did not even know existed. So you got a couple tiles there for transfer purposes. Maybe just one tile. These are pretty short trains after all. Maybe I can go down to just one tile for the station here. It is weird seeing a transfer track right out in the open like that, and it's just surrounded by a little flower bed, and there's some track going behind it that you can't really see because there's trees in the way, and Street View doesn't take you very far. But this is a much better view than any of these photos that I've looked at so far have given me. Looks like, according to the aerial view that I can find, that it is just going to go back behind where you could walk around and over top of a staff parking lot, something like that. Alright, I think I'm done messing with the stations for now. I don't remember what side you exit out on, but since there's a big transfer track here in the way, it makes sense that you would exit on the right and then walk underneath everything. Alright, let's see if we can keep working on this facade and see if we can get a shape for this that works well. This is always the hardest part for me, trying to figure out what the shape of the building is. Even though I kind of box everything out, actually making it look nice is always going to be tricky. Alright, so we have a little start here for the facade of the building. I'm using these corrugated steel walls as the real walls. Had these vertical lines on them. Unfortunately, the RCT textures are a little bit dodgy looking, a little bit noisy, but this might be the best we can do. It's better than plain walls. I feel like it gives it that industrial kind of look that we're looking for. So we're going to try this out for now and see how it goes. So next thing I want to look at decorating is the chain lift area, and we need to have some sloped walls, and the best we can do is probably going to be the wooden fence, since this one can do slopes, and it also has that same kind of vertical look to it, which I think is going to work out for us pretty well. Let's give this a spin. Not sure I'm totally loving the look of this building so far. It's a little bit blocky, and the roof is really blending in with the walls. It's making it hard to read. I think I'm going to need to use a different texture for the roof here, or perhaps a different color. I was trying to stick with that kind of industrial theme with these steel roofs, but maybe I just want to go for base block instead, because it is a little bit darker and it's definitely going to read a lot better. Yeah, that definitely does read a lot better. Still not a huge fan of the way some of these edges look, but I'll continue to play around with some different stuff. I think it's just a side effect of these kind of corrugated steel walls. Since they have very jaggy tops and bottoms, they don't really fit flush with the standard smooth blocks and walls. So you kind of have to pretend or add in some filler corner pieces here and there to make things work out. All right, making some good progress here. Adding in the lift hill tunnel here, I think really sprucing things up. Going with the traditional wooden coaster and car ride for the roof on here. I thought about going with the slope shingled roof, but I don't like the look of the shingles, and I think the car ride and wooden coaster give it more of that industrial look that I'm going for. The supports for the lift hill are surprisingly scant. They look a little bit spindly in the photos I'm looking at here, which you would think it would be enough to support all the stuff that goes on in there, but you know, if it worked out, it worked out. So I kept it pretty simple here with some posts and the abstract wall pieces, since those can go on an angle. Those make some nice cross beams. Thought that looked pretty good. So we're just going to continue making some progress here. I think it's time to work on the building here at the top of the lift hill. Well, there's my attempt to do the 12E decoration on the side of that building. It's really tough to do with just signs. It's been a while since I've done some sort of like quote-unquote pixel art with these signs. You can get some pretty cool stuff with these if you really try. It's tricky though to get something that looks actually readable. That's gonna do for now though, I think. It looks legible, I suppose. I'm sure there's a good way to make this lattice structure here look good with diagonal track. I'm struggling though. I might give up on this. I thought I had a good thing going here with using the single rail vertical track as corner supports, but actually doing the cross bracing for it looks pretty bad. So I think I might have to find a different way to do it. Worst case scenario, I can always use the good old support structure pieces, but those aren't as fun, and they're a bit too boxy compared to the real thing here. And if I were to use the walls I was using before, they're not going to work so well either. There are not a lot of options when you have your supports in the middle of the tile like I'm trying to do here. Not a very big fan of this structure either. It's just really tough to come up with something that looks decent. I don't like anything I've tried so far. I think the best option I had so far was the single rail track, even though the diagonals looked really janky. I really liked having the corner supports sort of tucked away underneath the corner instead of directly on the corner. Sucks that there doesn't seem to be a great option, but I might have to do some digging around later and see if I can find something that I like better. In the meantime, we have to fix the corner here. So as I mentioned, I wanted to change all these into dinghy slide where it is visible and sticking out of the outside of the show buildings. So let's think about how I want to do that. The track here is not supposed to be going out from this side. It's supposed to be coming out from this side, but that's fine. At least for now. I might cover it up later. So we're going to be taking advantage of a plugin called a Ride Editor. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be turning all of the exposed track. I guess I need to build this building over here too, but in the meantime, all this exposed track I'm going to be painting with alternate color scheme 1. And then with the Ride Editor plugin, we can say change it from bobsled coaster to dinghy slide. And that's just going to change the visibility of those pieces. Now, unfortunately, it looks like it made them all invisible. I thought I used, I thought that I was using visible pieces with the dinghy slide. So what's up with that? Oh, it's because they're banked. Okay. All right, well, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna use display track instead. We're just going to fake it. Forget about what I said a minute ago. Now, I might have some problems with clipping a little bit, but I'm prepared to deal with that. I'm gonna say that's just fine. So let's go ahead and crank out the rest of these. Since this one is on a helix, we're definitely going to have some clipping issues, but I wonder if we set it down one unit, it might not work. It might work out okay. Alright, and now we can use the ride editor to, instead of making our alternate color scheme a different ride type, we'll just change it to invisible. And there we go. Now we have all of our exterior pieces are going to be a dinghy slide instead, so we'll have a nice covered up tubular ride. And we'll just deal with any clipping issues we see. Not a big deal. I like the look of it well enough. Right, nothing left to do but just keep cranking away at these show buildings and do some more of these exteriors. Shouldn't be too difficult. Well, we have our building filled out here. I gotta say, I'm not super impressed with the way that these corrugated steel walls have worked out for us so far. For a couple of reasons. One is that I put them on the outside tiles because otherwise we were having a lot of clipping issues with the cars here in the brake run and with the roofs. But that also leads to more clipping issues with the posts here, these poles that I want to use for some edge work. So I'm kind of thinking I might want to have to redo all of them and put them on the inside of the tile instead, like this, and might solve our issues with the poles clipping. But man, it's so much work to put all these in, even with Scenery Manager, which has been super helpful as always. Still deleting everything and re-adding it is a real pain. So far we have a lot of big, gray, blocky, boring buildings, which you gotta expect to have. So after I finish cleaning up all the glitchy walls and make those look a little bit tidier, the next thing I want to do is make this building look a little bit more interesting, and I'm going to do that by adding some cutouts where we're going to be looking into the building from above and seeing what kind of decorations are inside and what the riders are seeing. I also just noticed I didn't do the other side of the chain lift, so I got to add that in there too. So lots still to be done. So let's start with cleaning up these walls, I guess. One thing at a time.
Living in a vacuum where you can't hide, where no one hears you scream. Living in a vacuum.
Okay, so this is where we're going to end it for today for our first session here. Going to come back here and finish this another time. Again, not a super fan of the kind of boring textures we have for the building itself, but you know, that's what it looks like, so there's only so much you can do. I think the cutout here really helps make things a little bit more interesting. Got some other things I gotta tidy up here. This first drop zone over here is not really sure what we're gonna do with it. The track coming out of it's very strange. And then we got some more decoration on the outside to do, so more to come. But this will do for now. Alright, I'm back for day 2 of my disaster transport build. Hoping to finish everything today. I have a little checklist of things I want to get done. Obviously, we have pretty much finished the building here and need to do some cutouts and a little bit of trim and stuff like that, some more detailing. Then I do want to build a little bit of the plaza here in front of it as well. I'm going to try to get it all done today. We'll see how it goes. But for now, I think I want to start on finishing the cutouts for the show building. So let's start with that. Okay, so in real life, the space spiral, the observation tower here, had this really cool kind of spiral entrance because it's a double-decker observation tower, so you gotta have an entrance for the second level and an entrance for the first level. And I had this really cool spiral walkway that went up to it. Really struggling to come up with a good way to do that here in RCT, just because we don't really have the height granularity you need for it with footpaths. I was almost there with that wooden coaster track to stay in for the stairs, but couldn't get it to look good enough. So we're just going with some pretty basic pathing here, which I'm kind of disappointed about, but oh well. It's not really the focus of the plot anyway, but I guess since it's in front of disaster transport, it does kind of stick out a little bit. Hopefully I can live with that.
So I can know if you're a winner, baby. Work. Work it. Work. Work to be a winner. Winners, work it good. Sweat. Sweat to be a winner. How does that feel? Tell me, how does that feel? Is sweat dripping down your balls? Well, then you're not a winner yet. But come on. Work. Work it. Work. Work to be a winner. Sweat. Work it. Work. Work to be a winner. So now that we've got an understanding, I need to explain one last thing to you. When I say work, I mean you've got to work for yourself. Love yourself. Feed yourself. So you can be a winner. All together. Work. Work it. Work. Work to be a winner. Winners, work it good. Sweat, sweat to be a winner. Work, yeah, work it. Work, work to be a winner. Winners, work it good. Sweat, sweat to be a winner.
Alright, I think that's going to about do it for this build. You could definitely, of course, get more detailed with the backlots and the stuff behind on the beach if you really wanted to. But the goal here isn't to make the absolute most beautiful little diorama here I possibly could. Just wanted to get this ride built, see what it was like, get everything in here with the buildings and everything. I think it turned out pretty good. I like the shape of the building itself, the lift hill especially, I think looks pretty cool in RCT. I do wish I could have gotten a bit of a better structure here for the observation tower. And given more time, I probably could have come up with something better, but that's okay. So I think this is going to wrap up the first of the ride creation episodes. This is kind of fun to do. Don't know how often I'll be doing these or how many I'll be doing, just kind of whenever I feel like making them. I have a couple ideas for future rides I want to do. No saying when I'll be doing them, but keep an eye out on the channel for them if you are curious. And of course, if you'd like to download this, there's going to be a save file linked in the video description. That's going to do it for me for today. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.